Sharp 1 more minute. We see more attendees joining in. Again, we'll wait for 1 more minute before we start, this presentation for you all. Thank you. All right, let's start. Thanks all again for joining in this webinar. This is Jack here, your client partner as well as host. We have Shomu Bagchi, the delivery lead in ProSoft Technology Group. And Shomu, if you could just move to the first slide. I will just walk on the first slide and we can go from there. Yeah. So just to introduce quickly about ProSoft Technology Group, we are a 19-year-old company started in 1995, headquartered in Downers Grove, Illinois. Our competency lies around in business integration, business process, and enterprise portals and enterprise solutions and services. Apart from IBM, we have a huge practice in SAP as well as software AG, having a deep knowledge on SAP and IBM. We have handful of expertise in integrating SAP to IBM middleware tools as well. We have global presence around entire US nation. Apart from that, of course, we have our offices in Canada and India as well. India, we operate 24/7, assisting in Eastern and Central time zones. Our key market segments are not limited in financial services, insurance, retail, but also we are huge in healthcare insurance, banking industry as well. Thanks all, and I here request Shomu to take from here. And before Shomu walks you through, we will have a question and answer slide on the last minute of this presentation. Anybody who is interested, you can see the questions tab. If you could post your questions, Shomu would be happy to answer, one by one. Shomu?
Thanks, Jack.
All to you.
Morning, everyone. So the agenda for today's webinar is to show the audience the interaction between IBM Bpm and SAP, and how you can actually leverage this technology from IBM to get more value out of your SAP investment. So essentially, we'll cover SAP's world. We'll give a brief primer on what IBM Bpm is all about, and then the meat of the webinar, which is how IBM Bpm interacts with SAP and helps getting more value out of SAP. And as part of that, I will show you some demo videos as well to make it clear the ease of with which you can actually use BPM to manage your processes within SAP. So to start off, SAP is all over the place, and it is a leader in the enterprise ERP world. But there are issues, and the biggest issue that we really hear as far as SAP is concerned is that you always have to adapt your processes to fit SAP instead of the other way around. So any organization that implements SAP kind of has to fit into how SAP executes a particular process, whether it be order to cash, production planning, whatever it is, all the functions that you would use SAP for. So that's the number one issue, that it is rigid. It's built on best practices, but at the same time, your organization has nuances. In fact, sometimes your competitive advantage is being able to customize your processes to fit your needs. This includes all the tasks, the way the screens look, any amount of customization to fit your process. And that is difficult to do with SAP. Of course, it's complex to implement, and many times deployments are late, over budget, and also the operational visibility that you have across various transactions. So across your end-to-end business process, that is not the best. It's lacking. So those are essentially the gaps that BPM seeks to fulfill. So uh, where BPM comes in is that it sits on top of SAP, and it interacts with SAP in a bi-directional manner, and it coordinates all the work that you need to do within SAP, uh, with the ability for you to continue to use your SAP screens along with screens built in BPM side by side, and I'll show more of that. But what we've typically seen in many organizations that are SAP centric is that functional folks have almost a notebook, a roster of the set of transaction screens that they need to go to essentially execute a particular process. So if it's order to cash, this is the transaction screen to go pull up the order type. This is the transaction screen to create an order. And then this other group needs to pull up this other transaction screen to do the next work, etc. So it's like a notebook of a set of transaction screens that you need to go through. So where BPM can come in is actually guide the entire process while it is capturing statistics and giving you the full visibility across the end-to-end process. So here again, this is how it typically is in an unstructured world without a guided workflow system that's sitting on top. There are a whole bunch of different functional groups within your organization that are coordinating essentially via the ERP, but also via email and sending Excel sheets to each other and things like that. So essentially, although they are doing their work in SAP, it's unstructured. It's all based on notes. It's based on their just knowledge, based on their training that they need to use these set of transaction screens, etc. And moreover, there is no control, so you don't have the visibility into any potential operational bottlenecks, into potential groups that may be overloaded. So from a process cycle time and process efficiency, from a lean analysis point of view, you really don't have any visibility. So that's where BPM comes in. So BPM will let you work with your application of choice. For some reason, this seems to, the slides seem to race ahead, so just bear with me. So BPM will essentially work with your application. It doesn't seek to replace your core functional application. It will work side by side with that application, and it will coordinate the end-to-end process. So all your human activities, including system activities, which could be done in BPM or could be done in the end application. And the same thing with the human task as well. You could do it in a screen in BPM. You could do it in your screen in SAP, which will come up through BPM, as I'll show shortly. Or you could use a combination. But the idea is that you now get, you essentially coordinate or orchestrate your end-to-end process, and you get the corresponding visibility. And this also means that you can actually change things more quickly. So that's the other benefit. The agility that you get is being able to say that, you know what, I need this screen to look a little different. You don't have to do it in SAP. You can do it in BPM. I need to collect a few extra data points. You could do that. Or if I need to change my process slightly. So instead of going to this transaction screen first and then that transaction screen, I want to change the order a bit. You could do all of that very quickly. So essentially, IBM Bpm is a market leader in the BPM space, and it's essentially a workflow orchestration tool. And along with the workflow orchestration, which is its core, It has ability to simulate your processes. You get metrics out of your processes, things like end-to-end cycle time or cycle time for an individual task within your process, as well as wait time, which is when a particular activity in your organization is ready to be performed, how soon, how much time does it just sit on someone's queue before they can actually work on that task. So these are very important operational reports that guide you towards process efficiency and understanding activities that are value added and the total cost of your business process. So now the integration so this was introduced from version 8 of BPM, this seamless integration with SAP. Now BPM always had the ability to integrate with SAP, but that was just a back-end integration. So using API, etc., BPM could go push data in, or pull data out from SAP and show it within screens in BPM. That was a traditional way, and that kind of integration can happen between a BPM application and any kind of backend application in your organization. But from version 8 onwards, the integration or the collaboration with SAP was taken to a new level. So number one is that you can actually continue to leverage your SAP screens within BPM. It's not just a back-end integration. It's still bi-directional data integration, but you can continue to use your SAP screens, and any data that you put into SAP can easily be any data that you put into your SAP screen can easily be read by BPM, as well as any data from BPM can be pushed into the SAP screens themselves. So when a user goes from, say, one transaction screen to another, BPM can pre-fill the transaction screens based on data that was entered in the previous screen. So it's bi-directional data integration, but it's more integration at the glass. It's not just back-end integration. The back-end integration capability continues to exist. You can actually, from BPM, as I will show, log into SAP Solution Manager, and if you have predefined flows in Solution Manager, you can import them and then start orchestrating them via BPM. So I have a few short demos that kind of illustrate everything that I've talked about so far. So let me just dive into them. So the first thing, demo that I'll show you is that process. So let's say that you do have some kind of workflow in SAP Solution Manager. You can actually just go, this by the way, just to set the stage, this is IBM Bpm. So this is a module called the Process Center in IBM Bpm, from where you will essentially build your guided workflows that interact with your SAP transaction screens. So right now, right here, what we're doing is just going into SAP Solution Manager and importing a process that's defined in Solution Manager. And then we can actually play back that process. So we can actually execute that process right away. So here we picked this production planning process that was defined in SAP Solution Manager. And the important piece now to notice is that once this import completes successfully, we open it up in BPM, and we can see the process as it was defined in SAP Solution Manager. But the important thing is we can actually start executing this process. It knows what are the transaction screens associated with each of those activities, and running it is simply a matter of doing some simple configurations that's being shown, and we can execute this process. So that's the transaction type that's predefined for this particular screen. So, so that's a configuration element which just identifies which kind of screen needs to be pulled up. And now we are executing the process, and you can see that it interacts directly with NetWeaver, and it pulled up your SAP screen right there within BPM. So if you look at the screen here, this is all SAP inside the MRP run, and above completed, this is your SAP screen. But the buttons above and is BPM. So essentially, this screen is a combination of your SAP screen and the BPM screen. And it was the integration was just a matter of doing some configurations. And all I'm doing here is just changing the kind of transaction, and you'll see consequently that the appropriate transaction screen is brought up from SAP. So I run that same activity, and it is pulled up this screen. So the next demo that I'll show you again just takes order to create process. And in this one, this is how your business would interact. Let's say if you orchestrated your SAP transactions via IBM Bpm. So let's say somebody goes in and starts up a simple order to cash process. And so the first thing here is just to identify the order type. And they do that. They select this as a standard order. And this is again, of course, an SAP screen that they're seeing inside. That's wrapped, that's inside a BPM screen. They select the order type, they complete it. So that finishes their task. Now it goes to the next functional group that will have received a task in their inbox. Notice there are no emails to be sent. There is no manual task routing that has to be done. Automatically the next person in the chain knows that a delivery needs to be created for the order. And this is a simple process where order is created, delivery, pick and PGI information, and finally the invoice is created. So this step is creating the delivery. So, so in this case, it pulls up the appropriate screen in SAP. You identify the shipping point, identify from to etc. And the next step is pick and PGI. So you can see this, what this is showing to you is how BPM can be used to orchestrate your SAP transaction. So there's no need to have a Word document and knowledge in somebody's head or go through training for a new functional hire that you need to go through these set of screens. This solution will automatically orchestrate the whole process and will put work in your inbox based on what you need to do, and when you execute that work, it will pull up the appropriate SAP screen for you to complete your task. So this shows how BPM could be used to orchestrate your end-to-end process. So now the next demo, let me go one step further. Let me show you how we can get much more sophisticated, and this is where the agility comes in. So right now in the previous demo, all I was doing was orchestrating SAP transaction screens. But then going forward, let's say I want to evolve my process. I want to collect more data points beyond what is already there in SAP, and I want essentially to be able to combine what I do within BPM as well as what's there in SAP. And that's what this will show. It's essentially a similar process, But what we are showing here is that in this process, the green screens here are screens that are exclusively done in BPM, while the blue screens here are SAP transaction screens. So this is a combination of work being done within BPM and in SAP. And what this will highlight is that there is bi-directional data integration. If you put in some data into an SAP screen, that's available to your BPM process here. And any data that you put entered into your BPM process can also be pushed into SAP in when required. So that's the next level of sophistication where you can actually evolve your process, and it'll be a combination of BPM UI, exclusively BPM UI for certain activities, combination of BPM UI and SAP UI for certain activities, and exclusively SAP UI for other activities. So you can have any of those combinations. So here you can see that we're entering an order, and this selecting the order type, giving the organization, etc. This is all obviously in SAP, and we've pulled up the order screen. All of this is in SAP, but if you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, there are certain fields which are in BPM. So you can actually combine the screens this way. And this is just creating the order, it saves it. And there's it hit a rule, credit check has been exceeded. So now we need to do a little customization where we route this work to somebody else who has the power to authorize bypass this rule that is there in SAP, which doesn't allow this order to go through because the credit limit has been exceeded. So now this is just a screen in BPM. Now one thing that this demo doesn't show is that some of the data was entered in BPM, but as part of that screen, we could have also picked some data from we could have scraped the SAP screen and picked some data from that screen as well. So that is also possible. So, and this just continues on. Basically, this goes to a line manager that has the ability to approve exceptions to the credit check, and in fact that is sent back to SAP, and that allows this order to go forward. Now let me just show you a little bit of behind the scenes. I'll stop this one and show you how all of this is accomplished. A very quick behind the scenes. So essentially how this new level of integration works, and this works with NetWeaver as well as with WebDynapro UI from SAP. And essentially how this works is it scrapes the SAP screen. So you will be seeing in this video that all we have to do in terms of integrating to an SAP screen within an activity is just identify what kind of transaction it is. We give the SAP server and port number. This is for NetWeaver. and we just identify the transaction ID, and all it does is it essentially interacts with SAP as a HTTP client, right? So it pulls up the NetWeaver screen within BPM, and essentially it can scrape all the data that's coming in the NetWeaver screen or the Web Dyno Pro UI. It can scrape all that data, so it knows whether any updates that you make, or when it's pulling up a screen, it has all the values of all the parameters that it needs to read. So that's how it kind of that's how the data integration happens. It happens via HTML screen scraping, and so therefore, from an integration point of view, it's just a matter of identifying which are the transaction screens that you need, and basic server configuration for SAP. So that essentially should have given you an idea of how easy this technology is to leverage to get more value out of SAP. And so continuing on, essentially just to map that out again, it's BPM is quick, it's always runnable. There is no, as you saw, there was no compile step. It's all configuration driven. So that gives you agility, it gives you flexibility. So by BPM working closely and coordinating your SAP work, you essentially are much more agile than you would be in a traditional SAP environment. End-to-end processes are difficult to model, and it's much simpler to do them in BPM. Again, everything is configuration driven. As soon as you model something, you can run it, you can simulate it, and you can get process statistics. If you have some kind of process efficiency practice like Lean Sigma, this works very well with something like that. So you can actually, instead of taking a stopwatch and monitoring different functional groups, you can actually implement this software and get the same kind of reporting. You can very easily put in SLAs and other kind of activity monitoring that can help you manage your process and react to changes, identify bottlenecks, etc. So essentially, this is the domain of BPM where it specializes. So the domain is essentially becoming more process centric. So SAP is your ERP application, but it won't make you process centric. It won't make you agile and be able to get into a continuous improvement mode where you're able to adapt and continuously improve your process. It's a difficult thing to do, and sometimes the issue really is just the technology. You'd want to be able to change things quicker, but the technology just doesn't change that quickly. So that is the sweet spot for BPM. And so they actually work in conjunction with all your package applications. And like we demonstrated, you can use the best of both worlds to essentially bring more value out of your packaged application, as well as become a more efficient process-centric organization. So just finally, a quick word on ProSoft's BPM practice. We are experts in the IBM Bpm tool, and as Jack mentioned, we also have an SAP practice. So we bring in a lot of expertise in being able to analyze how you use SAP, the functions that you use SAP for, and where BPM can help. So we can come in, do a quick discovery, look at low-hanging fruit where we can demonstrate value of implementing BPM along in conjunction with your SAP implementation, and then go ahead and actually implement, finish the implementation as well. We can support your BPM environment 24/7, and help you stay up to date with the technology, make enhancements as needed uh, across the full life cycle of a BPM implementation. So that concludes this webinar, and I'll ask Jack to please open the webinar for questions. Please feel free to ask me any questions. If I don't know the answer, we'll certainly note it down and get back to you with an answer.
Perfect. Thanks, Shomu. I encourage the audience, if you have any questions, great if you could just paste your questions. We'll be happy to answer. But meanwhile, I have few for you, Shomu. What version of IBM BPM are you currently running?
So the current version of IBM Bpm is 8.5.6. So the demos though that I showed you were with version 8. So the conceptually it's similar, but of course what they've done with the latest version is made it even simpler, and they're also up to date with the latest SAP UI technology as well. So, but in essence, it remains the same. The latest version that you can use of the SAP toolkit is 8.5.6.
Sure, thank you. And when a SAP process imported, will it give swim lanes and groups automatically, or the imported process need to be updated?
So it will need to be updated. It will have some swim lanes, but that may not be exactly what you have in mind. So you will have the option, of course, to update it, and it's a very simple process to do that.
Okay. Here's the last one. How is the data from user input managed? Will it automatically goes to SAP?
Yes, that's a very good question. Yes. So if you are working in the SAP screen, so then the data will automatically go to SAP because you are working in the SAP screen. So there are basically, the way I read this question is there are two possible scenarios. One is that you're entering data in SAP screen, but then you want to use that data later on in your process to make some decisions. So you want to have that data in BPM as well. And that is possible. So when you enter data in SAP screen, that data and you can identify which elements of data you want. That data can be picked up by BPM as well. So as you enter it in SAP, not only does it go into SAP via the SAP NetWeaver screen that I showed, you can also keep it in BPM and use it in BPM for any subsequent decision. The other thing, variation also is that you might have a section of the screen which is not in SAP. You're actually just entering the data in the BPM screen. And that data also can be pushed into SAP if you require it to. So whether the data is entered in the SAP screen or in the BPM portion of the screen, it's bi-directional.
Okay. So, do you know how many organizations are using IBM BPM SAP guided workflow on their prod SAP ERP systems?
So that is something we'll get back to you on. There are a few, but I don't have the full list with me. So this is something that we can get back to you, certainly with a list of current clients.
Sure. I think that's it. I don't see more questions from our audience. So before we wind up, just wanted to thank you all. Thank you, Shomu, for being a coach on this lovely presentation. And to all the audience, whoever is interested, please reach back to jack@prosoftgroup.com, and I'll be happy to present a PDF deck of this, of this presentation. However, I'm going to send you a thank you email to all. If you could just respond to that, that would be fine and great. Thank you. This is Jack signing off from ProSoft Technology Group. Thank you all.